So getting started is probably the hardest thing that anyone can do. Let's face it, you haven't yet got the experience. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. And in regards to like fears and phobias and stuff, there's the fear of rejection, there's the fear of failure, there's the fear of the unknown. And, believe it or not, there's also that fear of success. You just don't know how well things could go if you do decide to actually work on your social anxiety. Now, I wanted to make this video because I've certainly had a few discussions with people about that whole, how do I get started working on my social anxiety or working to overcome my social anxiety? And I really hope that this video kind of helps those particular people out that I have spoken to, and hopefully many others as well. Now, the first thing to bear in mind with social anxiety is to actually recognize where you have that social anxiety. Because interestingly, I would say over the years, and I'll use myself as an example here, where there have been circumstances where absolutely, my shyness, my introvertedness would be more prominent. And then there were moments where actually I was pretty confident. I was really outgoing. I was able to just speak really fluently to people who I was friends with and also who I never met before. So it's worth just being aware of like, where do your strengths lie with being social and where is it certainly failing? And I think maybe a good example here is that I've known and worked with guys who are incredibly confident at work. When they're talking about topics of things that they are absolutely fluent in, then they need to do maybe like presentations at work. They need to be speaking to colleagues or go to different departments and stuff. Then, their confidence shines because the only way that they can function at work is to put away any kind of shyness and just to literally get on with the work because they've got the accountability there. Whereas, if they were being really shy at work and it was preventing them from actually doing their work properly or speaking to clients or speaking to colleagues, then, realistically, the likelihood is that they probably end up losing their job because they're not working to the best of their ability. So, people at work tend to definitely be a lot more confident, even if they are quite introverted or shy. There is this shift of accountability and certainly responsibility where they have to push aside that shyness and they've got to be like, right, I have to speak to people. I have to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job. So then you've got that. And what about then the areas where the shyness does kick in? Do you find that maybe you struggle to speak to people if you go to, I don't know, if you're going to go, first of all, just socializing, whether it be for a hobby, whether it be for an event or whatever, but somewhere where you have to constantly speak to strangers, that's more for a social aspect rather than for work reasons where you have something that you need to speak about with them. Because then if that's the case, what I would be saying is write that down. Keep track of where you are being really shy. Even if it's in dating, whereabouts in dating do you find that you're really shy? Is it on the date? Is it when you're going maybe speed dating? Is it in a bar? Is it at a place where maybe you've got a hobby or an interest and you just maybe struggle to have a conversation with someone else? Because at least with that kind of awareness of your social anxiety, you can then be breaking that down, or even as a coach for me, I can then look at that and go, okay, so there's an element of you struggle with conversation topics. Maybe there's also a lack of experience going on there. Maybe the fact that you just haven't put yourself in enough environments to practice your social skills, then that could be an element. So it's just worth being aware of where you are confident and you don't really struggle with social anxiety, and what places are you struggling with social anxiety? Now, in fact, even off the top of my head now, I can even recall there were times when I really disliked the idea of going into like shops or even going to like the cinema even and actually asking a question to staff. Like I used to like kind of hyperventilate and be like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I'd be just saying this internally. I wouldn't be saying it out loud like a crazy person, but I would certainly be like internally struggling with just actually asking people questions. Which then kind of really leads on to like another thing is when you are starting off and you have at least recognized your areas where you're most strongest and maybe where you're weakest, I would then be suggesting that you actively go and try and put yourself in those circumstances to really figure out if it's something that you can do on your own or if you need support with as an alternative. Because, you know, don't get me wrong, any coach will try and take in a client and they want to work with them. But ultimately, I have met people and I've certainly worked with people where they really just needed a nudge. They just needed a little bit of support. Someone telling them it's absolutely okay, go and give that a go. And then after a couple of goes, they were absolutely fine. And this happens. You know, sometimes I think there's this perception that we are worse than we actually are. And that might be because you've not really had enough people give you some positive reinforcement and tell you, you know, that actually you're not so bad. That just go put yourself out there. It's absolutely okay, whatever the reaction and the result is. You know, don't put too much of an expectation on it. And because of that, I think, you know, a lot of people just rely literally on that own internal dialogue, so that kind of inner voice. I always imagine it like Scrubs, with like where JD, the main character, he's always got that kind of like narrative voice going on, talking about his thoughts and how he's feeling in a moment. And in a way, that's kind of the same thing that really happens to a lot of guys, and I think for me as well. So when you actually get that validation or positive reinforcement from someone else, that tends to override that. But is that always necessary? No. So for most people, I always try and recommend go and put yourself in a circumstance where you can try and just challenge these struggles that you've got. So if, let's say, for example, if I use the being nervous to go and ask a question to staff in a cinema, then I used to go and put myself in those situations. I'd go to the cinema, I'd be like, oh, I want to go and see that movie. And I would purposely not buy a ticket online. I would try and do it at the kiosk at the desk. So then that would force me to have a conversation with someone and ask them. And I would obviously, I wouldn't do it so regularly because otherwise I'd be spending an absolute fortune just to try and, you know, test this particular problem. But I would at least, you know, go a few times and be like, okay, well, actually, that's not so bad. If I do it a few times, I can kind of come to that realization that actually I'm okay. Now, if I use then maybe a much more, I wouldn't say extreme example, but if I use just an example that most guys can relate to, that if they see someone that they're attracted to, you know, have they got that courage to go over and speak to them? Now, I'm not worried about, you know, what conversation is said, what words come out of your mouth, what's the outcome of the interaction. I'm more just interested in the approach itself. Like, can you do it? If you can't do it, if you've put yourself in the situation where you've left the house, you've gone somewhere busy, what might even really help you is to actually find a reason to go out, not just to go and speak to people, but like, let's say you need to go shopping for food, or maybe you want to go and buy some new jeans, or you want to go clothes shopping or something. You know, really tie it in with something else that you want to do. So at least it does also take the pressure off of, instead you going like, right, I've left the house today to go and speak to strangers on the street. And this is going to be my sole mission today. You know, for guys who just have never really experienced cold approaching before, especially in an environment such as like the streets of London, it is incredibly stressful if you haven't got some support in place. And I will actually do, I think, another video talking about how like how friends can give someone support if they are going to be cold approaching. So this is kind of more like then for the friends, or I suppose the wings, if we want to say that as well. But just have a reason to go out the house and just practice. Just find a reason to speak to people and be honest with yourself and really answer the question, can I do this on my own, or do I need help and guidance from someone else? Now, I'm not really going to overwhelm you with, I think, many more things with that. I think just as a getting started, I think that's probably the best thing. Just first of all, being aware of, where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are in regards to being social, and then actually just testing on the weaknesses part, where are those locations, or what are the situations that you find that you are genuinely struggling with that you may need help with? Or on the other side of that, are you able to work on these yourself and find that actually it was just more of a case that you needed to just experience it a bit more and kind of like calm that inner voice and be like, oh, actually, this isn't so bad. I can do this. I'm just not in enough situations to have to deal with this. Now, after you've actually, gone through at least those two phases, then after that, I would be saying like, well, look, are there coaches out there that can help you with the issues that you've got? Now, believe it or not, I've known guys who are actually quite socially anxious to go to the gym, or with eating habits, or with fashion. They're scared to go into a shop and ask people for fashion advice. And maybe they don't know what kind of questions to ask and stuff. And even then, that's absolutely okay, because at least there are coaches in these different fields where if you don't know what to ask, you don't know what to say in regards to maybe like what gym equipment to use or what food to eat, and or maybe even like what clothes to buy, that there are coaches out there. And it's absolutely the same with dating. There are coaches out there that can help you with those circumstances where if you see someone that you like, if you think she's quite cute but you don't know what to say, then you can be taught how to freely express yourself. You can be given the experience of exposure therapy and desensitization to those experiences. And then, it's like with anything, even if you start a new job, you get to this point where once you've done it a few times, you've got you've done the repetitiveness of it, or you've got the repetitions in. That was the word I was looking for. Then at that point, suddenly you're not really stressing about it. And this is the same even with social anxiety as well. It's really just about practice and putting yourself in those situations. But if you need support there's always coaching out there that can help you. And if you find that I'm someone who could be that person for you, by all means, do have a look on my website. I offer free consultations so we can have a chat about your social anxiety and, where are your struggles? Where do they lie? What are you okay with? What are you not okay with? And even if we don't end up working together, I will absolutely at least give you some pointers, give you some directions on things that you can go off and try and do on your own. But if you then find that those are a struggle, then I would absolutely recommend going to some kind of coach that's out there to actually help you with this. And I've got other videos talking about how do you find that right kind of coach that's suitable for you? Because unfortunately, even in the world of the dating industry, the amount of people I've known who tend to sort of just shop around and then they try and go for someone who's like £1 cheaper than someone else. And then in the end, they've then gone to 2 or 3 different coaches and they've still not got the results that they want. I don't want you wasting your money. I want you to be getting the right kind of coaching for the right kind of issues that you have, and then being able to move on from it and actively use the new skills that you've learned and developed and applying it into your life. So if I'm someone who can help you with that, then absolutely amazing. Definitely check out my website. Otherwise, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to my channel. I really, really love this content, and certainly being able to just help guys with their social anxiety, particularly even in dating. But I want you though to be taking action. Sitting at home and not doing anything about your dating life, or definitely your social anxiety, is not going to make things any better for you. You have to be doing something to overcome it. Procrastination is the worst. In fact, no, I think procrastination is probably the killer of confidence. If you don't do something about your procrastination, you will never be confident, and just bear that in mind. So like the video if you can, please do subscribe to the channel, and, you know, have a go at the things that I've suggested in this video. Like, give it a try. Figure out like, where are your strengths and weaknesses with social anxiety, and then challenge those weaknesses by putting yourself in those circumstances and just seeing how you react. Do you need help, or can you do it on your own? And if you need help, I'm obviously going to be here to take you on that journey, and hopefully I look forward to hearing from you too.